Hey everybody, Jeremy here from Numbot Studios. I am here today with Ryan, who is the editor of Grit Fantasy RPG, and we're going to discuss his new one-shot scenario that he made for Grit Fantasy. And hello, Ryan.
Hey,
Thanks for
man.
joining in.
Heck yeah. Can't wait. I'm super pumped about this. Very excited to tell and show people the scenario.
Yes, and the scenario is called The Stillness.
The Stillness.
Yes. I've read it through it, and it's awesome, man. I love the layout.
Thanks,
the gray tone that you're using with it is awesome.
Took a note from the book, it's got to stay in that same style, you know what I mean?
Right, yeah. So for those who are kind of new to this, Ryan has just recently dropped this on the Discord server for Grit for just like kind of community use. We're going to see kind of how it goes, and it's just really cool that you put this together. It's like the first official Grit adventure.
Yeah, I mean, the book has a wealth of information in it. I mean, there's, over 100 pages of stuff to get lost in. And the only thing, it's got all the tools to make your own adventure, but there isn't an adventure in it, right? Because, you want people to do that themselves.
Right.
And I really like, especially as someone who doesn't have a ton of time to prep things, Grit is already really great for that. But I love the idea of, man, I want to, see what Grit's all about. Oh, look, here's a companion adventure I can play to test the system.
Right. Yeah, and I really appreciate you putting that together because I didn't, I just sort of like.
Yeah, what else were you doing? You weren't doing a million other things.
Yeah, I wrote the book, illustrated the book, and I mean, with your help with all the editing and layout and all that stuff, it's great. But yeah, I just didn't put any energy into actually publishing any adventures or anything. So this is really good to see.
Well, I'm kind of like, I don't want to say I'm your right-hand man or your second in command, but I'm kind of like right underneath, like I'm like your Darth Vader to your Emperor Palpatine or something, so like I kind of, a lot of these things that I do are in service to Grit, the universe of Grit, so you have been hard at working on the follow-up to Grit Fantasy RPG. You are making videos about Grit Fantasy RPG constantly. You are trying to workshop new products for Grit Fantasy RPG. And I thought, what can I do in the interim? And I have a lot of fun creative writing. And the way that it kind of came about was the story builder from Grit. I was just going to do an adventure one day. I rolled on the story builder, roll up 4 terms or 5 terms, and let her rip. And then this is what came out of it. And I've tested it now with 3 separate groups, and each one was such a blast. And I was like, man, I would love for other people to play this. And I was like, that's what doesn't exist for Grit right now. An adventure. A one-shot, a little scenario that's all set up and ready to go. It's got everything, all the story beats, everything you need is, nice in that nice little package that you get Grit in the mail. You get your book. Maybe you go on the Discord, you grab the adventure, and you start, and that's your first foray into the world of Grit.
Yeah. I reading through this, I really like that you added the builder prompts.
Yeah.
Just to show, anyone who is reading through it, that this is what you rolled up on the story builder. And for those who don't know about the story builder, I have actually made videos about all the builders in the book, and the story builder is one that I did cover. But Ryan here has just rolled this out on the story builder, which is basically just a quick tool to set up a plot and everything. It's got like 5 things, right, that we roll on.
Yeah, it's just 5 little tables you roll on. Each of the tables has a ton of different little keywords, and you just you don't even have to use them all. You don't have to roll on them. You could pick whatever you think looks cool. Basically, the whole idea of it is just, this is to get you inspired. Here's some words to inspire you. Here's like Jeremy has like, here's the 5 things I think every good story needs. And you look at all those things and it kind of starts to formulate an idea in a story immediately. If it does for me anyway, when I roll on these, I always roll random. Whenever I roll on them, I have my keywords and I'm like, okay, what is this going to be like? And then in my brain, I'm like, okay, this is what I want it to do. And it's just those 5 little words really help you. It does so much more than you think. So of all the things in the book, it's hard to be like, the story builder is my favorite thing about Grit, because it's so inconspicuous and it's so unassuming. They're just words. They're just little keywords, but it's in the top 3 for me of my most memorable things about the game.
I would agree. That's same for me. And that may be a little surprising, after all the time working on it. Just that those 2 pages of tables is one of the coolest things, but it's true. It's always surprising what comes out of it. And I have never been disappointed by it. It just always produces something interesting.
It's impossible to. And I've rolled a couple times on it where, because like I said, I always roll random on it, but occasionally one of the keywords won't fit for me. And so I just either roll again or I just go back in and I look through. I'm like, okay, here's the 4 I got. Let me go to the one that's not working.
Right.
And I'll just scan it and choose. It's like there's so many different ways to interact with it that I just really like it.
Right. A lot of them give you a choice between a couple things or 4 things, usually.
Right.
2 to 4. So if you roll that number, you have an option between some stuff to choose from. So
that's right.
It works out. But anyway, that's what the story builder is, and this is kind of what has been used to put this thing together. So I was going to ask you, like, what prompted you to kind of put this scenario together in the first place? Like, how did it?
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, it's no secret that Grit is really the main way, other than there's this one I'm designing as well, but Grit is really the main way that I've been engaging in the RPG hobby lately. It's just the only kind of thing I want to play. It's so simple, it's so quick, right? Commercial for Grit, notwithstanding. So one day I was just like, I want to make a scenario. I'm trying to remember exactly what it was for. I think it was just a random scenario I was going to play with some people. And I was like, well, what am I going to do? All the work's taken off of me with the story builder. I should say the beginning prompting. I rolled on the story builder and I just started kind of writing in my brain, like, here's what I think this would work, how it would work. And it wasn't honestly until I played it the first time that I really made it what it is now.
Okay.
So do you want me to share?
Yeah, go for it. I was going to say, so you played it once. Did you do a lot of tweaking after your first playthrough on this, or how did that?
No, yeah. So it was really the ending. So I wasn't sure how I was going to end it. Originally, I had the ending. Oh, and I guess we should say, if you're watching this video and you're a player who wants to play this, there's going to be spoilers galore.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, we're pretty much going to walk through kind of the beats of this thing.
Yeah. I forgot to say that right off the bat. Like, I mean, you've opened up the first page, but from here, yeah, if you're a player, beware. This is, there's going to be spoilers here.
Right. So. Spoilers galore. Exactly. If you're a GM, then I think this will be a great video for you. But so, looking through this, if you look at the front page, in the bottom of the middle, I have this little story overview. So the last bullet there, location 3, it says you must dig to trigger a shambling mound fight. That was my main ending to the game. Because the whole thing, if I look at the story builder prompts, if you can see on the top left here is what I rolled for the story builder. I rolled discovery. Discover for the plot, island for the terrain, a cemetery for its location, an unnerving silence as the detail, and rumored assassins as its event. So when all that came to be, I was like, okay, I'm obviously on an island. I want there to be a jungle. The end of the island is a cemetery. Like the final location is a cemetery you get to. And in the middle of the cemetery is this clearing, and there's a golden hue coming up from the ground of this clearing. It's like all this loose soil. And presumably that's where the treasure is, because I have the people, the players are treasure hunters. And so they've come to this island looking for this bounty, so when they get to this end scenario, this end encounter, they can see a golden hue coming up from the ground. That's presumably where the bounty is. So when they start to dig into the ground to unearth the treasure, what they instead unearth is a shambling mound. All right, just like this loamy detritus, ground covery kind of a monster that just materializes and attacks instantly, right? And so my initial plan was, as that happens, ghosts then rise up from the graves of the gravestones around, and now you're in this like, holy shit, we got to fight. I got to fight the shambling mound and all these ghosts, and once we do, then the treasure comes up and we've won. Okay, so that was the initial ending, and in the first time I played it, as that was happening, I was kind of like, I wish there was something like a twist, like a little twist. And one of my favorite things in story writing is putting a twist in.
Right.
And it's always fun when a twist happens to you. And I like putting twists in my games. So the twist in this game is, after you defeat the shambling mound, because the jungle you were in this whole time is kind of like a labyrinth. It's like you're stuck in there. And even when you're at the cemetery, you're completely encircled by jungle, trees, and foliage. You don't know how you're going to get out of this. It's almost like you're at a dead end, and here's this shambling mound. So once you defeat the shambling mound, I say that the trees open up and reveal to you the beach where you dropped anchor, and there's your ship, and the captain is waiting for you, and you've won. And as he dies, the treasure hoard, comes up from the ground. Wow, you've got your treasure and your escape. You've won. And so the players at that point, as they've been through this whole scenario, they're like, I did it. We won, guys. And look at this. Here's our loot. We got all this loot.
I love the idea that it just kind of comes up out of the earth.
Yeah, it's almost
like
magical.
I like how you I kind of wrote that out. It's really cool.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah. So then, but the moment a player character, because I'll always say, okay, you've defeated the big bad, the monsters are dead, the gold is there, your captain's waiting for you, the wind returns, the breeze is nice, and it's a beautiful day. It's back to you. How are you going to end this off? And they'll be like, I jump into the treasure pile like Scrooge McDuck. And I'm like, oh, I'm so glad they did that, because that's when I tell them that the second you come into contact with that treasure, you turn into a shambling mound. The trees reclose, the wind dies, the sky goes dark, the captain yells no, and is deafens as the trees close around you. And now the player who touched the gold has to now become the shambling mound. He gets to play as the shambling mound, and the rest of the party has to now fight him.
That's awesome.
And them realizing like that's what's happening every time I've played it so far has been like, oh my, wait, what? And the person that did it is like, wait, so I'm dead now? I have to, and you're like, yeah, you're this monster. And so now you have to, they're in the situation where it's like, I got to fight my friends here. And it's at first it's like, what do we, what do we do? Is there anything we can do? And they almost bargain at first as they come to grips with what's happened to them. And then eventually they realize like, well, we're at a dead end. There's nothing we can do. We can't get out of here. We just saw how to leave. It was to kill the shambling mound. You're the new shambling mound. Like, we got to kill you. And so now they fight. And if the shambling mound wins, and kills the other two people, then he's the new monster at this island. And if they kill him, the stuff will open. The trees will part again. The sun will come out. The treasure will come up. And now they can leave. But again, if they touch the treasure, the same cycle will repeat. Are they going
to be tempted to do it again?
Right, because they might think like, okay, maybe it happened once, and now it's good. We had to sacrifice our friend, and now it's good. But no,
right.
So it's like I rolled discover as the plot, but really, it's not a discovery. Really, it's a survival. This is really a survival, escape room horror kind of a scenario.
Right.
Because if they win by leaving, they get nothing. They can't take the treasure with them because they'll turn into a shambling mound. And they've found nothing throughout the whole scenario. They've just survived, you know.
Right. I mean, I could see discover a little bit, like discovering that that is how you escape.
Well, true. Well,
maybe
there is
that's the
other
discovery.
elements in the first encounter.
Okay.
I mean, on the screen you can see right now, the first encounter is the jungle path. So they start in the jungle and they're on one they're on a path, and it's just a straight path that looks like it just goes on and on and on forever. As the party searches around that area, if they try to meander off the path, the trees will kind of move to block them. And it's almost like, you know, like I don't know, like a goalie kicking them back into play in the path.
Right.
As they get down towards the end of the path, they'll start to see some people ahead of them. They'll see the backs of these people, but it's really hazy. If they make an insight check, they'll notice that those people, the backs of them, kind of look like themselves.
Ooh.
And so if they keep going to try to, like, okay, let's go talk to these people. If they keep going to try to talk to them, bloop, all of a sudden they appear where they started at the beginning of the path.
Oh.
And so at first, I feel like they're always like, what? What the hell just happened? And they'll try again, and the same thing will happen. And they'll realize they're in a loop.
Yeah.
So they just keep going forward, and they keep appearing there. So now what do? You're just in a loop. You can't go to the sides because the trees block you in. So how do you get out? You know, so there's puzzles there. And there's obviously ways to get out. And there's also some tips that I've included in the first page for if your players are stuck, you know, ideas of how to get them unstuck and move on. Because the worst thing is you're in a puzzle situation and you can't figure it out, and now you're just sitting there.
Right. Yeah, that's good that you did that. That's a good addition to this, I think.
Oh, thank you.
So it looks like you have other locations as well, like an encampment and the path that's forked.
Right.
I think I read about some seekers that are in there. You know?
Yes. So in my number 5 there on the story builder prompts, I rolled up rumored assassins. Initially, when I did this, it was like on the nose. There's rumored assassins on the island. I kind of took out the on the noseness of the rumored assassins, and I just put in assassins. So once the party finds their way through the first encounter with the loop path, they will make it to the forked path, which will look very similar to the first one, except at one entrance of the forked path to the right, there's a guard standing there stoically, a little bit creepily, and he says nothing. Right to the left, it kind of seems lighter, and there's a little treasure kind of like dotted there. If the party had figured out, so at the very beginning, there's this map that is given to the party, and there's a little Sudoku puzzle here. And if they figure out the Sudoku puzzle, it will the clue will spell out left, wrong. Okay, they'll get this at the beginning of the adventure. They can work on it. They don't have to work on it. They can do whatever they want. There's also a little map of the island that may or may not help them. They don't have to ever do anything with this if they so choose. The last group I played with, when I gave them the map, they didn't look at it for the whole time. The group before, when I played with it, they were poring over that thing, looking for clues the entire time.
Wow.
So it was 2 completely different play styles, and they both worked perfectly fine. Like I said, the last group I played with, they didn't touch the puzzle. They didn't attempt it. It didn't stop them from doing anything. But had they done it, it would have made them more sure about this second encounter. So the guard that's stopping them at the right path is going to say, if you valued your life, turn back or take the other path. The other path leads to prosperity. This path leads to certain death. And he will not let them pass. So then the party can they have to make a decision. Okay, do we fight this guard? Do we sneak past him? Or do we just, we can't go backward because that's a loop, so this is the only way forward. We got to go forward somehow. How do we go forward from here? Do we go past this guard, or do we just take the other path that looks like it might even have a little treasure we could find? However, if they go left and trust the guard, they didn't do the puzzle on the map, and they just go left, they will immediately be ambushed by seekers at a dead end.
Nice.
There's nothing else that would no loot. It's just a dead end. And the seekers, I have them say like, "Very good. Come closer. Yes. Perfect. Now it's time to feed." And then they attack. And it's just now they're in now they're in a combat situation. Suddenly like, oh my gosh. And seekers are not to be trifled with.
No, they are these demonic creatures from another dimension that, are after magical items usually.
And they are the assassins. They were my inspiration. The rumored assassins inspired me to put these seekers in there. And so it is meant to do for this scenario is to slow down and deplete resources of the party. But again, they don't have to go that way. It's almost, I don't want to say it would be stupid of them to go that way, but it's almost like, how like in Lord of the Rings, there's that one moment where the hobbits find Aragorn and Sam is like, "I don't trust this guy." And Frodo says, "I think if he was working for the enemy, he would look fairer. He would smell better. Like he would look better. He'd be more enticing, right?"
Right.
And that actually makes Frodo trust Aragorn because he's not like that. And this is kind of similar. The left path looks inviting. It's kind of, there's light there. It's a little warmer. There's like treasure kind of like dotting it, like follow me, and I think to, the clever player, they'll see that as a warning.
Right. Right. Too good to be true.
It's like maybe this kind of seems like they want me to go this way. I'm not going this way, hopefully. But if they don't, and they're just like, yeah, let's get some gold. That's what we're here for. Because the party are treasure hunters. As the GM, you should be telling the party at the very beginning, and you can see I have a little intro. You are a group of thrill-seeking treasure hunters. The whole reason you're on this island in the first place is because it's got rumors of this crazy enormous treasure hoard. It's like the most famous, treasure score in the world. However, everyone that goes there never comes back. So your goal for your whole entire reason for being there in the first place is to get treasure. So some players might play that up and say, well, there's treasure there. I'm here for treasure. I would go follow the treasure. Right. If though they solved the puzzle and found that the puzzle says left, wrong, and and this is what happened in the game 2 games ago, and it was perfect. The person that was working on the puzzle finished it right before they got to the guard.
I see.
And they were like, well, this guard isn't letting us by. I guess we got to go that way. And then he was like, oh my God, I just finished the puzzle. It says left, wrong. No, we can't go left. Don't go left. And they avoided it because he found that. And it was awesome. It was like a perfect, for me as the GM watching it, as the one that kind of wrote the story. Excuse me. It was really cool to see that happen.
Yeah, for sure.
And so then they talked to the guard and figured out a way to get past him by not fighting him, which was clever. Same with the last group I played with. They didn't fight him either. They instead put him to sleep. They had a little loot item that I gave them at the very beginning that was random. That was like, it was like a sleep ring or something.
Nice.
And he fell asleep and they were able to go right by them. And if you get by the guard, that takes you to the final encounter, which is the graveyard, which is where we talked about before. You are going to, you can't leave there without fighting the shambling mound and the ghosts. So you are going to fight in this scenario. You don't have to fight anything until you get here. There are opportunities for you to fight earlier. But so basically 66% of this scenario is non-combat puzzle stuff. And the very end is combat.
Yeah, that's a good mix.
I felt like, sometimes it's fun to go through and just role play and just try to figure stuff out. But also, it's also really fun to fight stuff,
Right.
So for this first, scenario, hopefully of many, I thought it was good to have a mix of the two for
Yeah, I like that.
for
I like the
GMs.
mix. How many players did you have in your games that you ran for this?
Yeah, it's a
And
good question.
oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. You
Oh,
said
and I was going to say, how many players, and is there a number of players that you think this would shine the best for?
So the first time I played, I think there was 4 players. The second time there was 3, and the last time there was 2. And so I was actually lucky to play with, kind of the gamut here. I don't think it would work as well with any more than 4.
Okay.
Um
That's typical for Grit, actually.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
And honestly, and this is what you've said this before, and I think I agree with you. I think 3 is the magic number for this scenario, and I'll tell you why. So when I played the first one with 4, it was a lot of fun. It really was. But there almost wasn't a ton for all 4 players to do
Okay. Yeah, I see that.
at the beginning, right? In the first one,
Right.
they're just trying to figure out the puzzle of the loop. And so just going, okay, your turn, your turn, your turn, your turn.
Right. Right.
It wasn't bad. It wasn't like, oh no, this is wrong. It was fine. And it was fun. It was just, I remember thinking at the end of it, if I had a note, I was like, 4 players might be the max. I don't think I'd want any, if there was 5, if I had a group of 5 that wanted to play Grit, I don't think I would play this with them.
Okay.
2 was the opposite way. So for when there was 2 players, it was great until the end. And at the end, one player died at the boss fight before the shambling mound was killed. And that wasn't fine, or that wasn't bad. So he died. He went out in a blaze of glory, and he ended up killing the shambling mound that way. So he died. There was 1 PC left when the treasure came up.
Oh.
And he of course was like, "Ooh, I'll take the treasure." And then he turned into the shambling mound, and it ended, and it was cool. But I think my favorite thing is when there's a party still alive, and they have to have that drama of, "Oh my god, I got to fight you now! Holy cow, I got to fight my friend! I can't believe this!"
Yeah, that's
that
cool and
happened
dramatic.
Yes, yeah, and that happened in the play with 3 players. With 3 players, there was still a party left when the first player touched the treasure.
Nice.
And so then you got to see that fight. So I think 3 is the perfect amount. But the other player amounts are fine. And you could even do this 1v1. You would lose that thing at you would lose the drama, but I think it would still be cool for it to end like, oh my god, I just turned into the Shally Mountain and it's over, and I'm the monster now of this island. And so it would work. So that's why I wrote in here that it was 1 to 4 players.
Okay.
And I stand by that. I think 3 is probably, I've only played it 3 times, but I think the 3 player game was the best for sure.
That makes sense. I was going to ask how did the focus dice work out in the game? Did they end up spending out all the focus dice with the games you played, or how did the economy work?
So most people don't know this, and I'm just going to tell most people now. Jeremy and I had been working on the rules to Grit right up until the end. Even we were constantly tweaking things. Jeremy would play and he'd be like, man, I've play tested this so many times, and there's always been this one little thing that's bothered me, and I haven't figured it out until now. And then we were like, all right, well, let's make the change. And one of the last minute changes, I hope you don't mind me saying this, Jeremy.
No, not
one of the
at all.
last minute changes that Jeremy decided to make was the way you use focus dice. The new way, I'll just say how it is now in the rules, is much simpler than it used to be. Now you just use a focus dice. Anytime you make an aspect roll, you can throw a focus dice on it. There used to be these skills that also don't exist anymore, and the focus dice were attached to those skills. If you used a skill that your character had, that's the only way you could use a focus die.
Yep.
That's gone. Now it's much simpler. I would say the game is much better for it personally, although it was kind of like, oh, we're seeing the skills go after years. Like, oh, that's a bummer.
Yeah, it was a dramatic moment, but
it was the right thing.
Yeah, it was absolutely the right thing.
Yep. It was. So to answer your question, Almost all the focus dice get used almost every time I play now.
Excellent. Good to
And
hear.
it's so great. The player that died had 2 left when he died, and so I let him use those. It was overkill, so I just let him throw them on there just so he could say he did
For the Blaze of Glory.
20, yeah, for his Blaze of Glory.
Oh,
So
yeah,
he
that's
did
cool.
27 damage or something crazy like that. It was awesome. And so yes, the focus dice are used almost all the time.
Yeah, good to hear. Yeah, it's always a good sign. I know this isn't like specific to this scenario, but it's always a good sign to see most all the focus dice used in a game.
I completely agree. And in this game, there's a lot of opportunities to use them that are not combat related. There's a hidden path you can find that is your first clue to get out of the loop. Basically, it leads to this forgotten encampment, which on this sheet is location 1A, which is within the first location. You have to make an insight roll to find it. And there was one of the players in one of the games. I was like, they were kind of like, they were kind of like, what do we do? We're stuck. I don't know how to get out of this. And so I had them roll insight, and they rolled a 6. And I was like, I was like, I'm not going to tell them. I was like, you notice that there's something close to you that kind of looks not like, it doesn't look natural. Like all the trees and foliage look natural. And he was like, you know what? I'm going to throw a focus dice on that.
Oh, nice.
So he threw his D4 on it just to bump him up to that 7. And then I was like, okay, you see this little path, basically. That's right there. It's just, there's a bunch of overgrown stuff that you can like easily hack out of the way and move on. And so then it was like, okay, cool. That was worth using a D4 just to get us moving.
Right. Yeah, that's a good use of it.
Yeah, so it was cool. Plus the guard. There's a lot of players that used focus dice on the guard because they don't want to, for some reason they haven't wanted to fight him. Nobody has actually fought the guard yet. They've all tried different ways to get past him, which I love.
That's awesome.
One group just used diplomacy and they just like rolled really high on a command roll. And no, I'm sorry. That's my example. They rolled a command roll and they failed. They were like trying to get him to follow them while the other ones like ran away, like through him, but they failed on it. And so he was like, I really want this to work. I don't want to fight this guy. I'm going to throw a D6 on there. And they were able to do it and get by him that way. And it was really cool to watch that.
Yeah, that's awesome. One thing I want to say too is I like that you put the monster stats and everything like on the first page here.
Okay.
I think that's a good touch, just to have all the monsters like in a really good location with all the stuff they need for it.
Yeah, thanks. I found that, a stat block is something really handy to have referenced, to have at a reference point. You can look in the book if you really want to use the exact monster's abilities. You can look in the book for that. Personally, when I GM Grit, I don't typically stick verbatim to the abilities of each monster. And Jeremy's written that such that, yeah, you've written that, I feel like, such that you don't have to. He'll yell at me when we're off recording, but I typically don't always stick to their exact thing. But if you want to,
I don't either, honestly.
Yeah.
Like I'll shorthand a couple, or a lot of times, I mean, a lot of them have 3 features, which are abilities, and I'll only use 1 or 2 out of them.
For sure. And I'll do the same thing. Or if there's really a specific monster I want to use because it has a cool feature, then I'll throw it in there for that. But these monsters I put in were purely serviced. I picked them exactly because they serviced the story builder role. Right.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to ask too if you rolled for them or you picked them. It sounded like you.
I handpicked these because when I knew that was going to be a treasure hunt and there was a cemetery and I was going to have the treasure kind of buried, I was like, what monster would be lurking there? And I was like, a shambling mound is perfect for that because it's just, a pile of detritus.
Right.
that's like mud and sticks and
Yeah, that
leaves and crap.
leaves a great visual for
Yeah,
stuff.
it
Yeah.
right. It evokes a really cool, I think, kind of like, oh, you wouldn't have noticed it was there until you started digging and then you dug it up. And
Right.
then there's a graveyard, so it's natural to have ghosts there.
Right.
And the ghosts are mostly meant to just be pesky. You see the shambling mound, and then depending on the number of players, you get some ghosts to deal with. And it's like, oh my gosh, okay, what do we do with these ghosts? Really, if you kill the shambling mound, the ghosts also disappear. Or you could try to kill the ghosts too.
Right.
And then the seekers are those assassins. But while I don't necessarily always use the features or the abilities of the enemies, I do always use their stat blocks.
Right.
And I thought it would be nice to just actually list out what the stat blocks are. Okay, you got your UAV or your universal aspect value first, followed by their how much grit they have, and then how many turns they get each round.
Right.
And I usually do stick to those pretty well. So that shambling mound is no joke. That's
Oh
a
yeah.
that's a
It's tough.
nasty tough fight.
Yeah.
You got to work together to take
Yeah.
that guy down.
If you get, I mean, it can take 2 turns per round, so it can team up on 2 attacks on one person, one character, right? So
Right. It's nasty. It's
yeah.
pretty nasty. And there's been some very clever ways that players have gotten around it. So just to give players a little bit of an idea, one of the groups that I was playing with had a torch, okay? And the very last scenario or encounter, if I just go to encounter 3, the graveyard. The last sentence of the first paragraph says it's extraordinarily dark and requires a light source, or else no easy rolls can be made. So if you don't have a light source, it's going to be harder for you. Well, it just so happened that one of the party members had a torch. And so when he went to dig in the ground, he stuck the torch in the ground first, and then he started digging, right? When the shambling mound came out to attack, he picked the torch up, and as his first move, he shoved the torch in the shambling mound's face to light it on fire.
Wow.
And I really liked that, and so I rewarded that. I was like, all right, this is going to be easy to catch him on fire. And then he took burn damage. I had him take burn damage every round because he was, he's a pile of detritus. He should be
Right.
He should be pretty
Yeah.
Flammable.
Leaves and sticks and stuff.
Yeah. So I thought that was a really cool idea, and it was a way to kind of knock him down a few pegs.
Right.
And it worked. And they didn't make short work of him, but he was a lot easier than he might have been otherwise. But although that does lead me to something I wanted to say about this scenario. I'm very proud of it, and I am happy that it exists here for all you potential GMs that are getting into Grit to use. But feel free, as you read through this, maybe you don't want to have that light source requirement. Maybe that's too much of maybe that's too tough. Maybe you notice none of your players have a light source, and so that they're never going to be able to do this. So maybe you take that part out. Maybe you don't do the epilogue part where somebody turns into a shambling mound. Maybe you allow them to take the treasure if you want them to have some sort of feeling of victory. Because, again, this is kind of a survival, and winning is almost kind of tantamount to losing. You're definitely going to lose one of your party members. Somebody's going to die, and then you're going to escape with nothing. So maybe that's too grim for you as a GM, and you want to give them some treasure or some loot. You're feel free to modify or change the details of this however you want to. This is what's worked for me. I've ran it 3 times. Each time has been the most fun I've had out of any scenario that I've built.
Oh, that's great.
Which is what made me want to, put this down into something for everybody to use.
Yeah, and I think that having the, putting it out there to change it or adapt it or whatever is just part of the spirit of the game anyway.
Yeah, they would do. They would change it if I told them they could or not.
Oh, true.
Once you have this, do whatever you want with it.
But I do like the idea that some adventures are just a little dark at the end. Like, not all of them have to, end in defeating the baddie and getting all the loot and everything's great.
Same.
I
That's
kind of
not
like that
life, right?
twist a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. I agree with you. One of my favorite things to do to players is subvert their expectations, and this definitely has a encounter 1, encounter 2. Oh, we're on our 3rd encounter. Okay, that's 3 little threats.
Right.
We didn't really get a ton of treats, but here's our here's our treat at the end. Yes, we have survived 3 encounters. Here comes our treat. And then so that subversion of expectation is, I think, where the scenario kind of comes to life. So hopefully you don't take that out as a GM, but I mean, maybe you find that it's more fun that way. It's completely up to you.
But I also see that kind of thing works really well with one shots, especially with characters that are not returning. It's just those characters are the only characters you're going to play for this scenario. That's it. Those characters are not continuing onto something else.
Right.
So you kind of freeze up that stuff if you have just like a one shot like that. So
yeah, you're absolutely right. And to that end, the character that died in the most recent time I played it, he built his character. Well, I gave him a pre-gen, but he made it his own. And he could have stayed alive and taken second chance at the end. The other player that was alive had a healing thing to give him, so he would have came back with a max of a limit of 5 grit with only 1. And the other player was like, I can heal you, so we can do this. We got this. But that guy was like, you know what? This character's kind of a scumbag. He kind of this is going to be the way he redeems himself, is by, doing one last act of heroism. He should die. And so it was really cool. And I think you're right. I think it lends itself, because he knew he wasn't ever going to play that person again. He didn't really, spend a ton of time on it. It was just this vehicle for him to have a good time for one night.
Right.
And that was the way he had a blast, which was, I'm going to go out in a blaze of glory and
awesome.
be part of the magic of the story,
Yeah. And if these are returning characters, they have a good story to tell on the next adventure.
That's true.
If they've made it,
Yeah, absolutely. They could, the surviving characters could always pick it up in another adventure.
Right. Just becomes their history,
Absolutely.
So yeah, that's awesome, man. Like, great job in this. I think that people are really going to enjoy it.
I hope so. I really do. That's all I really want. I just hope you guys, if you play it, you have fun with it, and you're able to, this maybe will start your love affair with Grit Fantasy RPG.
Definitely. Yeah, and I like to say, for anyone who's watched this video, thanks for sticking with us here and listening to us ramble on about this. Also, if you have not seen Grit Fantasy RPG, I have it available on DriveThruRPG right now. You can get it on PDF, softcover or hardcover. I have a Discord server set up that through the purchase of the book you can get hooked up with, and I am considering soon maybe opening up that to my YouTube channel as well. So,
and it should be noted that that's the way you get this scenario. If you want to play this scenario right now, it exists only in the Discord server.
Right.
I mean, if you somehow get contact information or reach out to Jeremy or myself, we'll also send it to you.
Right.
But it's in the Discord server right now, so get involved in the Discord server. There's a lot of good discussion over there about Grit. There's a lot of people playing and having a great time, and that's again how you get cool stuff like this and other things.
Yeah, and it's a good community, so join us. So I think that's all I really wanted to cover with that. Is there anything else you want to add, Ryan?
No, I don't think so. Mostly that thanks to Jeremy for designing this thing that kind of gives me a lot of fun to play within.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't have thought to create this scenario without Grit existing in the first place. So,
Right.
just all thanks to you. And
Sure thing,
I
man.
love the game a lot. It's so much fun, and I'm gonna hopefully I continue to make side content for everyone to enjoy.
Yeah. Well, hey, man. Thanks for all your help with everything, of course. And it's so good to see this being put out. And I look forward to seeing everything that you put out in the future for these things. So,
Awesome, man. Likewise.
all right. So, everyone out there, thanks for listening in again, and take care of yourselves, and hope you're gaming out there and having good times. And hey, talk to you soon. And don't forget to roll those dice.